As I'm sure some of you guys have noticed by now, I've slowly been moving into covering more of the creative side of tech products, and this is the latest addition to my creative arsenal, the Carvera Air Desktop CNC by Makera. This is a fully fledged CNC with a very small footprint. CNCs are usually massive. I've seen some that take up, like half a room and cost tens of thousands of dollars, which is obviously not at all realistic to own for a hobbyist like me. This is different. The build volume is going to be a fair bit smaller than a professional CNC. This one's about, 300 by 200 millimeters in the length and width, and then 130 millimeters height. That means you're gonna have to get creative for the bigger projects, but for smaller projects, this thing's perfect. Now, just a disclaimer before I start this review, I am not a pro when it comes to CNC milling or machining. In fact, this is the first time I've ever owned or even operated a CNC. So if you're looking for your first CNC and you want to know what a complete beginner can do with one of these, this video is for you. First off, let's talk about the build quality. The machine is extremely well built. The main structure is made from a metal alloy and the shell is stainless steel. The whole thing weighs like 110 pounds. It is not light. Sitting on my workbench here in my garage, it looks amazing. There's an LED status bar here up at the top, and then the entire work area behind the plastic shield is lit with more LEDs. It's probably the best looking tool in my garage, even ahead of my Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon 3D printer. Part of what drew me to the Carvera Air was supposedly how easy it is to use for beginners like myself. It has a laser probe built into it that will automatically trace out the build area around your material and do all of the auto leveling calculations for you. You put the probe into the spindle and it projects a laser down onto the build material. It'll do its round of leveling, and then you can switch from the probe to the bit you're using when it's done. This CNC comes with a booklet and lots of beginner projects with all of the instructions for getting you started. I did most of the first one, which is like an LED sign that you cut out of ABS plastic and clear acrylic, and as soon as I saw what it could do on the acrylic, I got way too excited and I just abandoned the beginner projects completely. I just dove right in with making my own stuff, which probably not the best idea, but I think it worked out pretty well. CNCing is not like 3D printing, where you can just throw a 3D model into a slicer, pick a filament, and presto, you got a brand new plastic part. Instead of creating something from a thin strand of filament, on a CNC, you're actually cutting into a material that already exists. You're taking something away from a solid piece of material. That means you have to define every cut, how deep you want to make it, where exactly the bit should move, how fast it should move, how quickly it should step down and cut deeper, and so on and so forth. There's a lot that goes into CNCing. The Makera team has developed software called Makera CAM, and this significantly simplifies the process of getting a CNC up and running with all of their default presets, but it also means that the more complex operations can be out of reach until you learn something like Fusion 360. For right now, I've been using Makera CAM exclusively, and I've been doing just fine. I'm not great at creating my own stuff yet, but I have imported projects that other people have made, like this 1969 Ford Mustang, and it came out really nicely after some post-processing. I probably should have used some better plywood or, real hardwood, but as far as the cuts go, the CNC did great. As far as my own projects go, I've also made this key holder out of a oak hardwood, which in my opinion looks so good for one of my first projects with this kind of wood. I could have never done this sort of thing by hand. I'm just not a great woodworker. I did mess up the chamfering on the outer edge, but the key that's etched into the bottom of this thing looks so cool. It's the kind of thing that only a CNC can do with that level of precision. When cutting wood and plastic, the Carvera Air can be set up to extract all of the shavings through a dust collection system. I've hooked up my shop vac to the port on the back, and it has worked extremely well. When cutting metal though, you kind of need to push air in rather than suck it out so that you can eject all the metal shavings and cool the CNC bit at the same time. Yes, this desktop CNC can actually cut the softer metals like aluminum and brass, and one of my first projects was to cut this small Mazda keychain out of a 3mm aluminum welding coupon. It actually came out great, and if your intent is to make and sell a bunch of keychains as like a side hobby, I can see this machine actually doing pretty well for that. But anyway, back to the air assist module that's built into this thing. I don't have an air pump right now to continuously blow air through the built-in tubes onto the material, but I did use my air compressor on a lower setting to intermittently blow the shavings out of the way a few times, and it seemed to work well. The dust collection system or the air assist can both be moved out of the way depending on what type of material you're cutting into. One thing I've run into a few times when cutting aluminum on the Carvera Air is an inevitability for anyone using a CNC, and that is broken bits. I am partially to blame for this. When first starting out, I didn't clamp the material to the machine well enough, and the material would move, causing the bit to shatter. But this does bring up a negative for this machine. The build area is already pretty small, and work holding, which is the clamps that you screw into the build plate to hold onto your material, that takes up a lot of that available space. So you end up trying to do these sketchy things sometimes to get all of that available build area, and sometimes that leads to mistakes and broken bits. The machine is also pretty loud when cutting into metal, but I suppose that's to be expected when using metal to cut metal. It puts a good amount of vibration into the work table it's placed on too, so don't get surprised if things start falling off your workbench every now and again. And while we're on that train of negatives, I also just want to mention that the rails underneath the build plate that move the plate back and forth are uncovered. They don't have anything covering them. So when you're cutting metal, or you don't have that dust collection in operation when cutting wood, all those little shavings are going to eventually find its way underneath the machine. Other than that, I've been really happy with this CNC. It's very rewarding to be able to envision something of your own making on a computer and then have a machine precisely cut it out of materials that are traditionally pretty hard to work with. And the Carvera Air has been surprisingly reliable for me. I've had, zero downtime with it so far, and other than a few broken bits here and there, it's been reliable. Makera did send me 2 other attachments for the Carvera Air that are really interesting. There's a 4th axis module and a laser module. Now, unfortunately, I've had my hands full just learning the basics of 3-axis CNCing to really dive into those in depth, but maybe I'll leave that for another video if you guys are interested. For me, the Carvera Air is an incredible addition to my creative tool belt. While I've been doing a lot of 3D printing over the years with various plastics, I have never been able to work with wood or metal, and this really opens up the possibility for a ton of more creative projects that I'm really excited to get into. If you're looking for a somewhat beginner-friendly CNC that you can fit into a small area, this might be the one for you, but the price is a little bit steep. It's not $5,000 to $10,000 like a big professional grade CNC would be, but it's still just over $2,000 US. The good thing is that you could always offset some of that cost by selling some of your creative projects. Personalized products are always in demand, and they're very easy to create on a CNC. Hope you liked the video, thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.